Welcome to the Georgia Baptist Discipleship Podcast. I'm Scott Sullivan, Discipleship Catalyst. Our team exists to strengthen churches in the area of discipleship. We are developing 4 incredible opportunities to serve local church leaders. First, a brand new resource called Formed, a discipleship culture blueprint. This resource will be shared regionally to help local church leaders create a culture of multiplying disciples. Next, we'll be launching men's ministry cohorts. Our team plans to connect and equip men's ministry leaders across Georgia to reach, connect, and launch men to impact the world. Our team will also be running regional discipleship leader cohorts to equip and mobilize discipleship leaders in each region of the state. Finally, the Spark Conference. Spark is our total church equipping event for lay leaders. We trained over 4,100 people in 2025. All 6 locations are built for 2026, and I hope you will attend a Spark event in your region and bring your lay leaders. You can get more information on Spark dates, keynotes, breakouts, and locations by going to thesparkconference.com. Now, let's join today's discussion. Hey friends, Scott Sullivan here with Georgia Baptist Discipleship. Today we're diving into one of the greatest needs in the church and the culture with one of the most influential leaders in the past century in this men's ministry area. The topic is Beyond Events, Reaching and Discipling Men. And I'm joined by Dr. Patrick Morley, who's president founder of Man in the Mirror, a global ministry to men impacting thousands of churches and millions of men. Patrick has PhD in leadership and organizational change. He's authored dozens of books, 7 million plus copies in print. Patrick, just as I say that, it just sounds crazy to have that much bandwidth. So brother, thank you for what you've done. And of course, one of those is the best-selling book, Man in the Mirror, which was named top 100 most influential Christian books of the 20th century. So brother, thanks for jumping on with me.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to be with you again.
Yes. We had a great time last time. It was super beneficial for me and for all of our leaders across Georgia and really across the nation, as we've got thousands now who engage with us. So, but on a personal level, kind of like what I said to you last time, thanks for your speaking ministry, your writing ministry, because it's influenced me not just as a denominational leader leading 3,300 churches in the area of men's ministry and discipleship, but as a dad and a husband. So thank you for your faithfulness. And I probably don't have to tell you that a lot of those heroes in our life aren't there anymore. They've fallen.
Yeah.
So thank you for your faithfulness along the way. And as we jump in, let me give a little shout out to a couple things. You and I were talking just before that we're going to be at a conference together, a collaboration with a guy down here in Warner Robins, August 22nd. So any of you all that are going to be listening to this prior to August 22nd, 2026, we'd love for you to be a part of this Stronger Together conference that we're going to be at. And I know you're keynoting that, so certainly will be a great event. And we're also having, Patrick, we are starting some men's ministry cohorts across Georgia. So they're going to start probably digital with me, and then we're going to, as we build that, they will become regional in person, where those men's ministry leaders across the state are engaging and being encouraged and resourcing one another. So that'll be super fun. All right, well, let's jump in. Very excited to talk with you about some of these topics. And Patrick, a lot of our churches still market men's ministry as kind of just one more event on the calendar, right? You get through the event, you check the box, and you move on. Pancake breakfast, beach feast, those sort of things. But in No Man Left Behind, you make a strong case that men aren't just looking for another meeting. They're looking for brotherhood. They're looking for mission, purpose. Why do you think so many churches default to events? And what does it actually look like to invite a man into real brotherhood?
Well, Scott, I'd like to begin with the pastor's heart. Every pastor who ever got into the pastoring business did that because he wanted to help people change their lives in Jesus, to discover or rediscover Jesus, and then become fully alive in their faith. So the problem will never be the attitude of leaders. So it must be something else. And so I have the privilege of sitting around all day and talking to leaders and working on this one little sliver of thing, how do we reach men? So if you're a men's leader or a pastor or a teacher and you're listening today or just a man, think about this. In your community, there are men driving by your church every day on their way to work. And every day after many long, hard hours, they're driving back by your church toward their home into a family situation that who knows what they're going to be walking into when they go through the front door. And these men are trying to figure out, how can I make my life count? Men, as men, we all want the same things. We want our lives to count, to make a difference. We want to find success and have great relationships. We want to feel fully alive.
Yes.
The problem is there are obstacles
Mm.
in the way, and this leads men to a sense of often futility about life. God, my life is not working. I'm just not happy. How can I make this work? And so, as these men are driving by your church in the morning and coming home at night, every now and then, one of them will look over and he will wonder to himself, could that be a place that could help me solve my problems?
Mm.
Interesting. Interesting. And so now the next phase of this is kind of a long answer. Sorry. Uh, the next phase of this is that now somebody from your church invites that man to visit. And maybe he comes alone. Maybe 50% of all the men in America are married, but 50% of all the men in America are not married. So
Mhm.
maybe he comes by himself because he's single, or maybe he comes with a new wife or a wife, maybe some kids in tow. Think about this, okay? When that man reaches out his hand for the front door handle of your church, just pause now. His hand's in midair, reaching for the doorknob or the handle. Let's pause and ask a few questions. Why did he just do that? What are the problems that he's trying to solve?
Mhm.
What does he need from us as a church? And fourth, how can we give that to him? These are four wonderful organizing questions. So I'm going to repeat them. Why did he just do that? What are the problems he's trying to solve? What does he need from us, and how can we help him? And I think that this would be a very nice place for church leaders to focus. Now, my story is that I grew up in a Christian home that didn't know Christ, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
My mother and father took their four young children to a church, just like I said, and they reached out. My dad reached out for the door handle. But at the church I grew up in, they didn't really have a vision for helping my dad become a godly man, husband, and father, because that's what he was looking for.
Mm.
Leaders, pastors, when men come to our churches, they're not trying to solve our problems. We're trying to figure out how to grow the church, how to pay the budget, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
fill the mission strip up. When men come to our churches, they don't care about our problems. They're trying to solve their problems. In the church that I grew up in, that wasn't understood correctly. And so my dad, my dad was abandoned when he was 2 years of age, and so he grew up with a single mom, and he never had a father to show him what it meant to be a man. And so he was basically left to guess at that because
Mm.
it was unexampled. And so he knew instinctively, as all the men in each of your communities know, the men know instinctively that the one place in the whole world where they ought to be able to go to get some help on how to be a godly man, a godly husband, and a godly father is the church.
Mm.
And so that's what my dad was doing. But at our church, they had a vision to do the work of the church, but they didn't have a vision to disciple my dad.
Mm.
And so they put him to work. He had a great work ethic, and he became the top layman in the church by the age of 40. He was the head layman. And so fertilizer sales, um,
Hmm.
bake sales, uh, all the work of the church that needed to be done, he would do it. He just got burned out though. He was 40. I was in the 10th grade. My youngest brother was in the third grade. We de-churched.
Yeah.
He just got burned out. So I had a very low view of the church. And then what happened is that I met my wife, and she didn't want to marry somebody who didn't know Jesus.
Hmm.
And
It's amazing how that influences us, but
how about you? Did that happen to you?
it didn't, but I've got a lot of friends that tell the same story.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up in a church. When I reached out for the door handle of my church, they understood. I don't know for sure, but it's just uh, it would be almost unbelievable if there had not been a group of leaders in that church who, long before I opened the door, sat down at a meeting and ask the questions that I mentioned previously.
Mm.
Okay, when young man comes to our church and with or without his family, why did he do that? What are the problems he's trying to solve? What does he need from us, and how can we give it to them? And so when I opened the door to the church that I became a follower of Jesus in, it was like a rush party. I mean, it was amazing. The surrounded by young guys my age who wanted to get to know me and started inviting me to things. No judgment, no criticism, and so that made all the difference in the world. So that's an extremely long way of getting to it. But uh, I would start by just saying, understand that pastors, they want to do the right thing, but
Yeah.
you're going to have to be intentional if you want
Yeah.
to do what needs to be done for the men. And then what you want to have done in the church, that will be the byproduct of what happens in men's lives.
Yeah, that's a good word. I like to tell our leaders, like a key question when I'm doing training that every leader should consider is if a new guy walked into your church this Sunday, would they leave with a friend, a next step, and a reason to come back?
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
this intentionality that you're talking about it's just gold. And of course, it's not just men's ministry. I mean, it's everything within ministry. When we want
yeah,
to be intentional, because we're dealing
yeah.
with the gospel, we're dealing with folks' lives in eternity
Hmm.
here. And speaking of real pressures that men carry, and you alluded to that in your newest book, From Broken Boy to Mended Man,
Hmm.
you open with this powerful line, hiding inside every man as a little boy. For some, this kid is healthy and strong. For others, it's insecure, afraid, and angry and broken. You also describe the fraternal order of broken boys and note that as many as 8 out of 10 men grew up in a dysfunctional home. So here's a question. How should churches speak to those real pressures that men face? Because I really don't know that a lot of our pastors are equipped to deal with that. I don't think they're against it. I just don't think they know how to face it, how to speak to that loneliness, the pressures, the fear of failure, burnout, rather than just, hey, go to a Bible study, right? And check the box. If we can just get them in the Bible study, we're discipling men. So how can churches speak to those real pressures?
Well, this is something that's been changing a lot over the last quarter of a century. Um, the idea that when we help people become followers of Jesus and then we disciple them into the future. Increasingly, people are recognizing that not only because there's so much brokenness, uh, not only do we need to disciple men into the future, we need to disciple them out of their past.
Hmm.
So when men come to our churches and to faith, and they come as broken boys. They come as men who have unresolved childhood wounds, and whether that's from parenting or it could be other reasons as well. Or a man comes to our church, he's coming out of a divorce, you know. So having some resources available. First of all, um, the pastors, I encourage you to start by being vulnerable about
Mm,
your own. The idea, you know, if God didn't use flawed men, He wouldn't have any to work with. Okay, so just acknowledge that we are all flawed and we all need help, and then I think having some resources available for men who are hurting. Maybe it's a small group for addictions. Maybe it's something like Celebrate Recovery, or something else like that. But for childhood wounds, one thing that you can do if you're listening, I have this book, but I also have a workbook. It's called the From Broken Boy to Mended Man Action Plan,
mhm.
and I'll give you a copy of that. And it's a 28-day self-administered
Hmm.
plan, but you can also do it with other men in a group. And so you can go to my website's patrickmorley.com/action plan. That's pretty
Okay.
easy to remember, right?
Yeah, that's gracious.
And yeah, you can download a free fillable PDF version of it. And so
Yeah.
this would be a great resource. Counselors all over the country are now using From Broken Boy to Mended Man materials to help men process their childhood wounds. That's the subtitle. It's
Yeah.
a positive plan to heal your childhood wounds and break the cycle. So and then I think third, another kind of resource is just having some counselors that you have confidence in that you can send men to, because a lot of the problems that men are dealing with are just beyond the scope of what it means to be a pastor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
And that's a great resource that you've created in our offense. So appreciate you doing
Yeah,
that. You know,
yeah.
in terms of resources, resources do well when there are pathways set up for
Mm,
our men within our churches, rather than just random opportunities and what I call a hope so theology, where we
hmm.
hope they're going to connect, we hope they're going to get discipled.
Yeah.
So and of course spent decades helping churches move from just scattered advance to this intentional pathway.
Hmm.
And of course, we talked about the Warner Robins event. That's one of those intentional places that Russ is trying to do that in his church. He's trying to get other churches involved in here. But in your No Man Left Behind book, you write that every men's ministry needs three things: an intentional purpose statement, a public slogan that I want to be a part of that, and then a simple elevator pitch, right, that every leader can share.
Right.
Here's the question: why is clarity so powerful for men? And I'm not
Mm,
saying it is for women, but as we just think about men, like this really resonates with me. Like the
yeah.
lack of clarity in my life, I could give you examples that would make people mad, and so I probably just shouldn't do it. But that this clarity question is just critical.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I think that men respond to vision, uh, to aspirational ideas. Um, I want to become a man who is fully alive,
Mm,
for
yeah.
example. Um, and giving men you talked about like a vision statement and so forth. So there are internal ideas that we have in leadership. We want to give every man in our community a credible offer of Jesus and then the resources to grow. That's great. That's a good purpose statement, one example. But then we also need a public slogan of that. And that could be, so the church, your church already has a vision. If you're listening, your church already has a vision. We're not trying to come up with a new vision for the church.
Yeah.
We're not trying to create a parallel church. What we teach is build a men's ministry that serves the existing vision of the church.
Mm,
And so, if your church is called Bethel Baptist Church, then maybe you call your men's ministry Bethel Men. And maybe Bethel Men, and maybe your slogan is building building men for stronger families and a stronger community. You know, that the kind of thing that would get a man to respond. Now, what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring a credible offer to every man in your community of Jesus, and then the resources to grow. But you're saying that in a more engaging way. Have I said enough about that?
Yeah, that that sounds great, and it reminds me of a resource that we just created for our churches. So, Patrick, men's ministry has been in my area for the 7 years I've been here. It's one of my
Hmm.
8 categories. We really started leaning in the last 12 to 15 months in terms of building it out intentionally with conferences and that sort of thing. So, the number one thing that I was hearing from pastors was, I don't have a 12-month plan. Now, I can do the beast feast. We kill a beast feast. I can do
Hmm.
that brotherhood breakfast. We do an amazing brotherhood breakfast, but I don't know what to do with them in between the events, how to keep them engaged, how to keep
Hmm.
them serving. So I created a 12-month plan that basically is gives them options. It's kind of a, pick and choose what works, but it would allow them to have some kind of prayer breakfast or the 6 to 8 week study, the ongoing D group that could feed into a monthly or quarterly men's event, all those sorts of things. And that is really resonating. And what they're saying is it just gives clarity of stuff we already wanted to do. We just don't know how to put it together. So thank you for
Yes.
beating the drum of clarity.
Yeah. Well, that's a great idea, by the way, and I'd really encourage everybody listening to take advantage of that. I discovered early on that we talk about events and so forth. The problem with events, this first of all, events are good. Events
Hmm.
are a good thing. The
Yeah.
challenge, or when I say the problem with events, I don't really mean the problem with events. I mean the challenge of the event
Right.
is Tuesday.
Hmm.
What do you do on Tuesday when the man is now back fully re-engaged in his everyday life and the waters recede and the ripple goes away and it's very difficult to capture how do you so the issue that I in the No Man Left Behind model that you referenced earlier when I was developing that the problem that I decided to focus on is momentum. How
Hmm.
do you create momentum? You do it with Beast Feast, but then how do you capture that momentum? And then and so the idea of you have men come to an event. So we've done 1,300 men's events for churches. Well, the churches did them, and we supplied the material and the speakers. And so what we do is we actually form the men up into small groups right there at the event for
Hmm.
what we call a believable next step. So a 4 week or a 6 week follow up group to maybe unpack the topic that was covered at the event. And so we've had, of all the students who've gone through, all the men who've gone through events, 72% of all the men who have ever gone through one of our events signed up on the spot for the small group. Now, we don't say, if you're interested, give us your name and information and we'll get with you in a couple weeks. So just imagine that. What's your favorite car? Your
Uh,
personally, if you could have a dream
yeah.
car.
Oh, it'd be a giant F-250 truck.
Okay, an F-250 truck. And
Yeah.
what color would it be?
It would be a earth tone brown.
Oh my gosh. So, just imagine you're driving down the road and you see over on the side of the road F-250, perfect shade of brown, and there's a sign on it that says half off today only. And so you wheel in there faster than and you're over there and you're walking around this truck and you are just drooling, over the seats, you're licking the tires. I mean, you're giving every buying signal in the world, right?
Hmm.
Well, what would you think if the salesman came over and said, Scott, I can see you really are interested in this car. Why don't you give me your name and phone number and I'll give you a call in 2 weeks to see if you're still interested?
That's a great example.
But that's what we do at our men's events often.
Wow.
And so the model that I created was that we form the men up into small groups at the event.
Hmm.
And it sounds, somebody just heard that and started shaking because it sounds so scary. It's not. I've done it personally, done it hundreds of times. It's easy as can be. All you do is have the resource with you, give it to the men, hold it up, and say, okay, men, we had a great time here. So now, over the next few weeks, what we're going to do is give you an opportunity to be in a small group to talk more about this. And so some of you are not able to do that for various reasons. So you go get a snack. But for the rest of you, what I want you to do right now is form yourself up in groups of 4 or 5 men, exchange your contact information, pick a time and place for your first meeting, and then answer the question right there amongst yourselves right now. Where are each of you on your spiritual journey today? Go ahead and do this now. And then it's chaos for about 3 or 4 minutes, but everybody, men are pretty smart, and they are able to figure out how to get into a group of 4 or 5 guys and
Yeah.
exchange their contact information and pick a time and place for the first meeting and talk a little bit about where they are in their journeys. And 72% of all the men we've ever had go through events have done this. So it's a great way to capture the momentum. I'm talking about momentum. How do you create it with the event like the one in Warner Robins? Then capture the event. You
Yeah.
wouldn't on a hot summer day, and it's getting hot. You wouldn't turn the air conditioning down to 70 degrees and then leave the windows open. You capture all of the expenditure
That's
of that
good.
energy. And so, how do you capture the momentum? You give them a next step. Now, pastors, leaders, deacons, here's a huge idea. We are not, when we do men's ministry, trying to create another ministry of the church. What we're doing is we're creating a track to populate the new and existing discipleship and mission and service opportunities that exist. So, Pastor, if you're listening and you need more, do you need more men for your mission trip? Do you need more men for your discipleship groups? Do you need more men to work on Sunday? Well, this is the perfect way to populate that. You get men to come to an event, they get excited. You form them up in groups right at the event, and then they unpack this and they get more excited. And then at the end of that 4 week group or that 6 week group, you say to men, okay, now what is the right next step for you? Would you like to grow more, get involved in one of our home groups or one of our small groups, either men's or couple, or do you want to do something to serve God? We have this opportunity coming up, and it's a way to populate what you are already doing. So this is a powerful way to get the work done while at the same time helping men solve their problems.
Yeah. I
Wow.
love it.
Wow. I'm so excited. I want to go start a church.
Hey, I'm telling you, but this is gold. Those are actionable, doable
Yeah.
steps that any leader who's watching right now, they can do that, right?
Yeah.
And this is exactly why I brought you on, Pat. You're so good at being able to describe and give these ideas. And these are the questions that our leaders are asking.
Yeah.
Now, many of our churches are struggling to
Hmm.
get, not just to get them in the door, but they're struggling to like, once you get them in the door, what do you do with them? How do you turn them into disciples, to
Yeah.
disciple makers? It seems to be a mindset shift. And so, what does it look like for a church to make the necessary mindset shifts from seeing men as recipients of the mission to becoming responsible for the mission? You have any
Yeah.
thoughts there?
Well, this is the biggest challenge of all, right? So I'm in a small uh, Presbyterian church in southern Alabama one day, and there are 60 seats in the church, and there are 12 people in the church on a Sunday morning. And the pastor's doing a great job preaching the word, faithful to the word, tremendous word from the Lord to these 12 people. And so I took note of that. And then I went back to that same church a year later. This was for my own worship, my wife and I, and we were camping and went to this church. And so the next year we went back, and the same pastor preaching the same great word, the same 60 seats, and the same 12 people. And I thought to myself, and I met the people. Everybody, the pastor, they all love God. They would love to have a
Yes.
more flourishing church and so forth, And so I began asking myself, okay, What is holding these people back from taking action?
Hmm.
What is holding these people back from taking action? Is that not the same question you just asked me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so uh, you've already talked about intentionality. I think having a plan is a big part of the solution to this.
Yeah.
I also think, we need to preach and teach the Great Commission.
Hmm.
I think we need to help people get the gospel under their fingernails.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we need to help people get the gospel under their fingernails. They need to dig into it, and so most people that are not doing ministry are not going to suddenly start doing ministry. So pastors get disappointed when they preach for this and they don't see a result. But what if you got one or two people? Let's just say you average Sunday attendance and most of your churches is 65, and so let's just say that you've got a dozen people serving, and let's just say that uh, you preach for more people to come forward and do the Great Commission and all the right reasons in the message, and you get one person come forward on 12. Well, that's an 8% return on investment in just 1 week.
Hmm.
I mean, who would like to get an 8% return on your 401k in 1 week?
That's right.
So instead of being disappointed that it's incremental and slow, let's be excited that we actually have somebody. And then I just think it's important not to be angry at people, because if we're angry at people because they're not serving, it doesn't make any difference what you say. It just comes through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if somebody's not serving God, chances are, if they're not the ministry, if they're not doing the ministry, then they are the ministry.
Yeah.
And they have something going on in their lives, and they need to be ministered to. And so just a few thoughts. I could probably say something different in 10 minutes, but
Yeah, that's great. I love it. So let's shift a little bit here because I do want to talk about reaching younger men.
yeah.
Not that older aren't important, but this is a specific area where I'm seeing that some people feel like they kind of got to change the message or they got to change the venue to try and reach younger men. And churches built for previous generations are often asking why younger men aren't showing up. Like I get that a
Yeah.
lot across
Hmm.
our denomination, across our state. So in both of your books, No Man Left Behind, From Broken Boy to Mended Man, you stress that we don't change the gospel, but we need to maybe think about redesigning the map or redesigning the on-ramps.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I really think that's a key piece of where
Yeah.
we're headed in the next few years.
Yeah. Um, I'd like to read a page out of Francis Schaeffer. Does that name ring a bell? Yeah.
It does.
So I like to quote dead people. That way they can't embarrass me later.
Here we go.
Um, um, in his book, Escape from Reason, 1968, by the way, so that's a long time ago. He wrote this: each generation of the church in each setting has the responsibility of communicating the gospel in understandable terms, considering the language and thought forms of that setting. So he goes on and he talks about, we don't change the message, just what you said. We don't change the message, but we do change the methods. And listen to the sentence.
Hmm.
The reason we often cannot speak to our children, let alone to other people's children, is because we have never taken time to understand how different their thought forms are from ours. Um, One more sentence.
Hmm.
This is terrible to read this much from a book, but anyway, in crucial areas, many Christian parents, ministers, and teachers are as out of touch with many of the children of the church and the majority of those outside as though they were speaking a foreign language. Um, so we without changing the gospel,
Hmm.
we must stop trying to win young people to our way of thinking.
Mm.
We we keep the gospel as it is, but we must engage them and understand their way of thinking, and then speak to their needs and their wants and their desires. And it's not easy. I'm a bit of personal vulnerability here. So, at our Bible study, the Man Alive Bible study that I teach, I've been teaching it for 40 years. So, we 10 years ago saw that we were not having as many younger men come to the Bible study.
Hmm.
We tried everything. Okay. I won't go through the 20 things that didn't work, but the one thing that did work that got younger men coming, we recruited. So I teach, and then we have say a dozen tables and each table has a leader. I started recruiting younger leaders, men under 40, to be table leaders. And there's a principle in nature. It's a law of nature. Like attracts like. Like attracts like. And so what happened was is that when I recruited the younger leaders, they started having younger men come to their tables were populating with men their own age.
Hmm.
So when COVID hit, 38% of my leaders were under the age of 40, and we were rocking and rolling. COVID hit, I was teaching from my desk right here on video for 14 months. And when we weren't meeting from March 13, 2020, and 14 months later, we came back live. Guess what? None of my younger leaders came back. Not one of them.
Hmm.
And I talked to them. They all had really good reasons. I can't, I mean, they're great. They're great men. I have lunch, have lunch, I have lunch this Friday with one of them. And anyway, they're all great guys and all have great reasons, but none of them came back. Well, guess what happened? The other young men at their tables, they dwindled away too.
Hmm.
And this is the moment of personal vulnerability. I'm still struggling to recover from that at the Bible study. And I know if you're a pastor and you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. It's hard to, and here's what is working today. Here's what's working today with younger men. It's personal engagement one on one, inviting
Hmm.
them for a cup of coffee, just asking them questions. Tell me about your family. What was it like growing up in your home? Where are you on your spiritual journey? What tell me about the work you do. Tell me about your aspirations. Basically, like a first date, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's working. So
Hmm.
younger guys are really craving this one-on-one personal attention. So, pastor, you can't do it all, but if you could get 4 or 5 men in your church who would all commit to have a cup of coffee with one man in his 20s or 30s, just have them do that once in the next 30, 60 days, and then say, and then after the 30 days or after the 60 days, we're going to get back together and we're all going to go, all the 5 of us, we're all going to go around and tell the story of what happened at our coffee with that other man.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, it's good.
And sometimes it's just giving men the opportunity to do something they already want to do,
Yeah,
but maybe they don't have the capacity, they don't know how to. Because, I mean, you know this, if you didn't grow
yeah,
up with a model of doing that particular thing, you've never tried that, then you don't know where to start from. That's why, like several things I'm seeing across Georgia that seem to be working is
yeah.
that some of our churches are using men that are not super engaged in the church, but they
Hmm.
do love to solve a problem. They do love to
Yeah.
help people, right? So they're involved them in service projects, building a wheelchair ramp, helping with, the hurricane that came through last year, right? So
Hmm.
those are working. Providing opportunities for dads and their children, a
Hmm.
fishing thing or something like that. An interesting thing that really has taken off that's not new, but it's just kind of this revivalistic is like what you and I are going to be doing in August. I
Hmm.
mean, those men's ministry gatherings of just getting men together for worship and then equipping is
Hmm.
like I spoke at one this past Thursday night. There was 150 men in the middle of the
Wow.
woods of South Georgia, and like you look around, you can't see a house. You don't see anybody, right? But these men just came from all over, and they're amening, and we equipped
Mm,
about manhood and marriage. And another really cool one too, Pat, is there's a church in South Georgia that is reaching young men, young boys,
hmm
by providing a skill. Like it's a job where they're teaching them how to change the oil, change the tires. So they're learning a job and a skill. But
mm,
with that, they get a mentor that's intentional from this particular church. And I was just like, that is gold in an
yeah.
area that teenagers and young adults are having a hard time, finding ways to make money. So, man, this has all just been great. I appreciate you jumping on. And any final word, Patrick, if you think about our pastors, men's ministry leaders that are going to be in the state, around the state, that you would leave them with?
Um, so I have two thoughts, if it's all right.
Sure.
So I always like to share what I think is the greatest lesson that I've ever learned
Mm,
for me personally. And I was in the middle of a business crisis. That's my background. It was a crisis of my own making, I might add. And a thought went through my mind. As I say, I think it's the greatest lesson. See if this doesn't resonate. If you're listening, uh, there is a God we want, and there is a God who is. They are not the same God. And the turning point of our lives is when we stop seeking the God we want and start seeking the God who is. Does that make sense?
yes.
And so I just think becoming more and more, becoming more and more humble in the way that we, yeah, it was like, Morley, what were you thinking? Did you really think that any amount of you wanting to reinvent God in your imagination to be the God that you wanted him to be was going to have one iota of impact on his unchanging nature and character? And this is the God that hurled the cosmos into existence, and he regulates the rising and the setting of the sun and the ebb and the flow of the tides. And I'm going to change him. And I realize he wants to change me. So I think
Mm,
pastors, leaders, teach your men this, teach ourselves this and remind ourselves of this. There is a God who is, and that's the turning point. And then I think to pastors and leaders, I think it's important to as a word of encouragement. Um, I think Jesus wants each of us to know. I think he wants you to know. I think he's saying, I see you. I know what you're going through. I love you unconditionally, and I will always be with you.
that is
I,
so good. I'm just taking notes all over. I got notes all over my desk here of things that you're
mm.
saying. So grateful.
Well, we recorded it, so you don't have to do
Well,
that.
we do, but I have messed up recordings before where I ended up with no show notes. So I've got some things here.
I'd be happy to do it again.
Well, in fact, look, this has just been so good. And, I think the real men's ministry question sometimes may not be, do men care? It may be, are we building a church culture that
Mm,
knows how to reach, connect, and launch men?
yeah.
And that's what my team's trying to do here. And we're not perfect, man, but man, we are giving a valiant effort and we're going after them.
It's kind of like, different countries. You talk to the men in this country, oh yeah, we want peace and we'd like to reconcile with that other country. And you go over here and oh yeah, we want to get together. We want peace. Everybody you talk to in this deal, they want this to work. So I think we can figure it out.
That's it. That's it. Well, thank you for providing the resource. Thank you for continuing to write and speak and create these ideas for leaders and coming to Georgia in August. I look
Yeah, I'm
forward to
excited about
seeing
that.
you, shake your hand, hug your neck. We're going to have a great time and would invite all of our leaders all across the state,
Mm.
even if you're not within that hour, 2 hour time frame, man, come visit, register for that incredible event. Patrick Morley, genuinely, brother, thank you for joining me today and for all that you do to train and inspire leaders to reach and disciple men.
Thank you. I love you, Scott.
Yeah,
Appreciate the opportunity.
love you,
God bless
friend.
you and all the men listening.
Absolutely. And I want to remind our listeners that we're only able to do this broadcast because you give to the cooperative program. So thank you for that. And I pray that today's discussion on Beyond Events, reaching and discipling men, will equip you to think deeply, invest purposefully, and dream big as we make world impacting disciples. Thanks for joining us on the Georgia Baptist Discipleship Podcast. If today's episode encouraged you, would you take a moment to share it on your social media and leave a comment? That helps us serve more leaders across Georgia. If you'd like to stay connected on a deeper level, join our Georgia Baptist Discipleship Facebook group. Then message me or send an email so we can keep you in the loop on upcoming opportunities, resources, and training events. Thanks again for listening and for all you're doing to serve faithfully and make multiplying disciples.